we'll do this draft. We'll do it quickly this time, by the way. I got some feedback, like I said a couple weeks ago, on it lasting too long, especially lasting too long until the Seahawks make a pick. The Seahawks have also, by the way, they signed River Craycraft, who means nothing to me. I'm not a Washington State Cougars fan. I think he's, the Seahawks are putting, the Seahawks very obviously have a type of receiver they want to fill their roster with right now. I would like to see them bring some, I'm going to say a word that because they just keep replacing black players with white players, it's going to sound like something else. I would like to see the Seahawks bring some diversity to their receiver room, but I'm not talking about the racial makeup. I'm not saying that they should or should not in that regard. What I'm saying is I'd like to see a tall, fast guy. I'd like to see a tall guy that can jump. I'd like to see a young guy, some young guys besides Jackson Smith and Jigba. And I hope they draft receivers, but it's pretty obvious that they're not scared of having overlapping skill sets. That they think they can get these guys that are good route runners like JSN, like Jake Bobo, who maybe is the big tall guy that can jump. Also, maybe, I don't know. He's been physically good. Like his physicality has been good. I don't know that he's a guy with like a super high vertical leap. He's very tall. It is Cooper Kupp. It is River Craycraft. Is these guys that run routes well. They obviously want that. And if you look at past Seahawks teams when Mike Holmgren was here, there were a lot of that kind of profile, right? Mike Hansen says, Casey basically just said, shut up, jump, and catch the ball. You heard it here, folks. Yeah, I'm saying that, though, to guys that, look like Yakima police. Yeah, I the old Patriots teams, the old Seahawks teams, they had a lot of these guys, like right around 6 foot. Remember Daryl Jackson? I've talked about Derek Mays a bunch. Sean Dawkins was like 6'2", but not 6'4", 6'5". Corin Robinson, I think, was like 6'2". Like, this is the kind of guy that can succeed here. You look at Devontae Adams and the guys who've succeeded in Green Bay over the years when Holmgren was there, and then Mike McCarthy and so I don't think that necessarily having many more of these guys, Mike McCarthy than Matt LaFleur, I didn't finish the thought, but they've had a lot of these receivers who are not 6'5" with 40-inch vertical leaps and 4.3 40s. They've had a lot of guys who are not DK Metcalf, a lot more guys who are like Jackson Smith and Jigba. I'm not super worried about this slot, the definition of a guy as a slot receiver, because I think that part of this is they're going to be able to get those guys outside and do things with them that the Seahawks could not do with DK Metcalf. But let's do this. I bring that up just to say I think that receiver, though I like some receivers in this draft, is probably less of a need than I would like it to be. And I'm aware that my taste in receivers may differ from the Seahawks. So we're going to run this on slow again. So I've once again talked too much. I've filibustered a bit. We're gonna run it on slow at the beginning so that, oh shit, this is way too slow. Oh no, okay, we're gonna be fine. So the Titans take Cam Ward. Ooh, there's been a lot of conversation about Shedeur Sanders falling. He's back to being drafted early on the PFF mock draft simulator. It's the only one we're gonna do today, by the way. You don't have to worry. Ashton Genty goes 5th. There's a lot of speculation that he won't make it past 6th. If he's available for the Seahawks, do you want them to take him? Because I do not. I have not come around that far on running backs by any means. A guy that I like a lot, Armand Membu. I think the first mock draft we did, he was still available when the Seahawks picked, and it just crushed the combine. He's probably the only guy in this draft I'd be okay with the Seahawks trading up for, I think. Is that true? I think that's true. This said they had to put Sanders higher so Ryan Clark will shut up. Yeah, Ryan Clark's been talking about how Shedeur Sanders is a victim of racism. His draft stock or his draft projection. I'm not even going to get into that, but Ryan Clark doesn't work for PFF. And I think these guys they don't factor any of that stuff into their projections. Not to describe them in a way that's disparaging. I just don't think they do. Okay. So we're not going to do trades, but I just want to see like this is what's being offered, just so you know. We're not going to look at them anymore. I think the Seahawks are going to skip on Mike Green. He has character issues. James Pierce, same deal. I hate to be boring and take Kenneth Grant. I hate to be boring and take Luther Burden. These are two guys that I don't know why. I have an aversion to. I like the story of Emeka Egbuka more than Luther Burden, and he's been very good, and he's still shined and still produced, despite Ohio State having just a like generational run. Not even generational. I mean, we're talking like a once in a millennium run of receivers that have come through that school in the last couple of years, and Emeka Egbuka has been good through all of them. I think Josh Simmons, by the way, would make sense from like just a play on the field, but I think that after Abraham Lucas, I think they're going to be a little wary of drafting the guy who's coming off of an injury compared to the guy who's not. So this part of the draft, I think, is where you have to decide, do you believe John Schneider last year when he said that he thinks that interior offensive linemen are overvalued, which I tend to, or do you think he's had some sort of epiphany and he's going to change his thoughts on this? And I guess the third thing you might believe is he may have all these beliefs, but he's run out of opportunities to acquire a very good guard, a starting left guard that's not on the roster right now. He may believe that he may believe and be bravely not. This is going to sound like I'm giving him a compliment. I don't mean this as a compliment. He may believe and be bravely facing scrutiny constantly that the starting left guard that he has is on the roster, and that's better than what's available. Whether that's Anthony Bradford, whether that's Satua Lamea, whether that's Christian Haynes, left guard and center. The all three, he may think he has all three interior offensive line spots covered. I would disagree with him. I don't think that's the case. I guess the third option is that he's forced himself, like with Charles Cross, where it's like, this is your last shot, and you gotta take a guy at 18 because you don't have options to acquire anyone else. So I don't want to take Kelvin Banks here. I've said all along, I think he's going to split the difference. I think he's going to draft a guy who could play tackle if Charles Cross walks or if Abraham Lucas can't stay healthy, but who could play guard if he needs him to. I like Gray Zabel. I don't think he can play tackle in the NFL. I think maybe we're taking Kelvin Banks. I don't know that John Schneider is like particularly motivated by avoiding criticism, but I do think that the Seahawks are just simply running out of opportunities to acquire a high-level interior offensive lineman. I would have loved to take Kenneth Grant. I think Kenneth Grant's great. I think he's a perfect fit for what the Seahawks need and a body they don't have on the roster. That's why I wish the Seahawks would have signed someone to a team-friendly-ish deal that would allow them to draft a guy like that who is like a unique skill set and body. A guy who is skilled and a guy who is uniquely talented at 340 pounds. Because the one guy they haven't really replaced this offseason, and I don't know that they're going to with some long-term option, is Jonathan Hankins, who doesn't put up sexy numbers, but Jonathan Hankins is like a 1.5 down defensive tackle. He's not playing on pass rush downs ever. And he's probably not playing on second and long ever. But He's a guy who's there to take up space and hold strong against the run. Kenneth Gregg can do that, and also I think is athletic enough to not. I'm not saying he's going to have 8 or 9 sacks a year, but he can be like, he's not a non-factor on pass downs. I kind of want to check. I think I might have just heard my phone vibrating. When you got kids, you got to be in contact with these people, you know? So I think the Seahawks are going to draft a linebacker, and I think people are going to think they don't need a linebacker. Because I think people think that Tyrese Knight is a 10-year starter. They've like anointed him after one season. I think the Seahawks are going to keep adding depth at that position. I know on this draft simulator that Demetrius Knight falls long past here. So I'm going to take a look at, so we drafted, this is a place where I like to take Ariante Ursary. He's a guy I like, but since we drafted Kelvin Banks, I don't feel a need to take him. Now, if the options are take Egbuka and Ariante Ursary, or take Kelvin Banks and then like Xavier Restrepo, I don't even know if there's. I mean, my point is that the receiver group that's available typically in this draft simulator is significantly worse in the second round. So, and there's even a corner that I can't. The East Carolina corner that I like that is not available here. I'm going to take Demetrius Knight. I know that he's available later in this, but I think that 50 is like a realistic spot where the Seahawks may take him, and maybe he's depth. Maybe he pushes both those guys, but I think he's like best player available there. It's a luxury. They're gonna figure out a way to get him on the field. If that's a rotation or whatever, they'll figure out a way to get him on the field. I don't like Maxwell Harrison as much as I like the East Carolina guy. It makes me a little bit sad that he's gone. I like Xavier Restrepo. Man. I think I'm going to take Xavier Restrepo. Once again, so Mike says his first round wish is Nick Emanwari. I would be intrigued by that. I'm not. The athletic profile is great, and the Cam Chancellor comparisons are pretty obvious. I think one of the things that happens is Cam Chancellor became an amazing safety. I remember when Cam Chancellor got drafted. I was doing college radio still, and either that or a podcast, but I think it was college radio. And I talked to my buddy about how the one guy with a great athletic profile was Cam Chancellor. Loved Cam Chancellor. And then I ended up being wrong. I think there were a bunch of guys in that draft that were great. I think that was the year before the Sherman draft, I think. But my point is yeah, Cam Chancellor wasn't Cam Chancellor when he came out of college. So I like Emanwari. I'm a little bit skeptical of. I'm even skeptical, by the way, of any defensive back in the first round. Period. Even though I think it actually is more of a need. I think that the Seahawks have done a very good job of finding those guys later on, and Devin Witherspoon's going to cost a shitload of money in a couple years. And they're going to probably pay Witherspoon. I don't think they're paying Tariq Woolen, but they're going to pay Witherspoon. I'm taking Xavier Restrepo. Yeah. I think the Seahawks need, first off, I like Cooper Kupp. You don't know if he's going to stay healthy. They still have room in that room. I don't think they're going to take, I would have been okay with I would be okay. We might have an opportunity to take Savon Williams because I know how this draft falls sometimes. And I like him a lot, the kid out of TCU. Big, tall guy, athletic, Wildcat quarterback, can run the ball a little bit, kind of like a more athletic version of Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill's a very good athlete, a more athletic version of him. So I'm not pledging to you that I'm not taking another receiver, but I think that the Seahawks may leave this draft with only 1 or 0 receivers potentially. But I think if they draft one receiver, I think it's going to be a guy that fits like a kind of similar profile to those guys we're talking about. Unless they plan on using Williams. I think Williams is the exception. I'm going to speed this up a little bit because we don't need to talk as much between these day 2 and day 3 picks. Also, I'm going to try to take a quarterback, but I know that Quinn Ewers falls, so I'm rolling the dice. We're going to try to get Quinn Ewers at 172 probably, because I know he falls there. That's inside intel. So Kelvin Banks probably gets to play left guard right away. I think that's probably the spot that he plays. The Seahawks probably also need a center, and Jalen Noel at being available here makes me regret taking Restrepo a little bit. I'm taking Jared Wilson. I don't even think that means that Olu Oluwatimi is like not going to be the starting center. I think it's possible. They just need options. Savon Williams does fall to 92. A lot of times he was getting drafted higher. I've seen this is a tough pass if I pass on Savon Williams. I like him a lot. By the way, last week I was trying to think of the Penn State safety that I like. It's Kevin Winston, a guy who put up really strong numbers according to PFF in 2023, dropped back in 2024. Yeah, and coming off of an injury. You know, a guy that's like maybe could spend a little bit of time in the slot. You start to get into that like it's very easy to try to get Devin Witherspoon outside, because I think there's some belief that if you find a Kyle Hamilton type, you can get him outside and then you unlock a little bit of what Devin Witherspoon has. I don't know if that's true, by the way. I don't know if he actually is a better player if he's devoted to the outside, but I do think he's maybe fills a need that's harder to fill. This is the last pick until, man. I think that's the last offensive lineman I'm picking. Kevin Winston Jr. or Savon Williams. Go with your heart, Casey. Go with your heart. We're drafting Savon Williams. We're going offensive line, wide receiver, offensive line, wide receiver. What is this? Is this Madden? So I think the chances are not drafting either of those positions anymore in this draft, even though there's other guys that I like. I think that it's maybe an offensive lineman makes some sense, but that wide receiver room is starting to get a little bit bloated in this case. No, I didn't draft. I drafted Demetrius Knight also, so that's not as damning. Like to get an edge rusher, like to get an interior defensive lineman. It hasn't fallen that way so far. Ooh, Basil Tootin is a guy that just got drafted out of Virginia Tech that I like quite a bit. Brashard Smith, by the way, is a guy that I like quite a bit that got drafted here. Quinn Ewers has fallen down the draft board. I know a lot of people like Will Howard more. I don't. I don't like Dylan Gabriel at all. I would be, if the Seahawks draft Dylan Gabriel, I would think it's too early. The only exception, maybe if they draft him at 234, their final pick, and just because they don't want to have to compete for him in the UDFA market. But I'm not a Gabriel or Howard believer. I like Brashard Smith a lot. If Ewers wasn't here, no, I said I was going to take him at 172, right? Okay, let's look at yeah, I think I did say that. I want to look at Antoine Powell-Ryland because Virginia Tech has had they have such like just a fast team this year. Whenever you see that, a team that's like so athletic, and these guys, so Antoine Powell-Ryland, 4'7", 4'6'9", 40, 36.5-inch vertical. Athleticism score isn't great, but all right, we're gonna. Do we assume that I'm taking Brashard. So Brashard Smith, SMU running back, great measurables. Used to be a receiver, which I think you want in the modern NFL. You'd like to have that dynamic somewhere in your running back room. Kenneth Walker catches the ball a little bit. Zach Charbonnet catches the ball a little bit. That was kind of Kenny McIntosh's thing. He hasn't really become a great producer in that role. I'm taking Brashard Smith because I think it allows you to move on from Kenny McIntosh if you need to. Now what I'll say to you is, if Quinn Ewers is not available at 172, which quarterbacks are always unpredictable. A couple years ago, they thought Malik Willis was going to go in the top 5. He ends up going in the 3rd round. Kenny Pickett goes. He's the only first-round quarterback that year, if you recall. So we're on Quinn Ewers' watch over here on the left side of the screen because, he goes 162 to the Jets. So I'm telling you, I'm probably not, unless I take Curtis Rourke later, I'm probably not taking a quarterback. This is what signing Sam Darnold frees you up for, though. Because I even think if the Seahawks had not traded Geno Smith, which, while I'm frustrated that they didn't draft a quarterback, while I'm frustrated that they didn't sign a guard, the amount of pieces they've been able to accumulate because they traded DK Metcalf and Geno Smith, just the financial burden that was taken off of them because of those two guys has allowed them to go sign Cooper Kupp. So Sam Darnold, Cooper Kupp, $30 million, less expensive is what I've seen quoted. I'm not quite sure that's true. But they've been able to DeMarcus Lawrence, oh my God, why am I blanking? Probably Ernest Jones. One of Ernest Jones and Jaron Reed is not back. If both those guys are back, is my guess. And maybe both. So anyway, it just freed them up to make a bunch of other moves, and and also gave them 2 high draft picks in this year's draft. I want to say Tyler Cooper. No, see, Tyler Cooper's a guy I like. It makes me regret. It makes me regret the fact that Tyler Cooper is here. I had a shot at Ariante Ursary. I got the Georgia center. Makes me regret drafting Kelvin Banks in the 1st round. Even though I think he's a 1st-round prospect, even though I think he could be very good, I think Tyler Cooper's also very good. Man. So now you got to start to dig into that, like the next. So Curtis Rourke is here. Man. Yeah, it's just not as exciting down this far. I haven't seen the updated rankings. I'm going to pull up. I like Zeke Biggers. I think I'm taking Zeke Biggers. I'm going to get a really bad grade on this, by the way. This is a reach according to PFF. Zeke Biggers is a guy, pretty good athleticism, a body he's 320 here. I don't know if, he's one of the few true nose tackles. They say 320 here. Let's see what he was actually at the combine. I would imagine a guy of his size is going to show up to the combine, playing a little bit or a little lower than his playing weight. These guys manipulate the numbers a little bit. He weighs in at 321, but 34, almost 35-inch arms, big hands, big, strong, athletic guy. One of the few guys, I think the next, him and Tyleik Williams, the nose tackle from Ohio State, are the only other guys that I think really even give Kenneth Grant a run for his money. I'm taking Zeke Biggers, even though I think it's a bit of a reach. And, realistically, I mean, I don't love Kyle McCord. Do we take him here? I mean, it's just a scary profile. A guy that just feels like a turnover waiting to happen. Shuck is still here. I would actually be okay with Shuck here. I'd be okay with Shuck probably the same time as Ewers. I think the reality is that Shuck's not going to get drafted so I'm gonna slowly start to not take these these simulators for Upton Stout. I think this is the guy. This is a guy that I'm going to take Upton Stout. I believe Upton Stout was a converted corner that may be able to play a little nickel and gives you depth in that safety room. Also, Jalen Lane is a guy that I would have had on my radar if I hadn't taken Xavier Restrepo that early. Dante Thornton, big combine star, absolutely blew up the combine. Shuck goes 201 to the Rams, which is going to feel really shitty if that happens in real life. I don't think it will. I think Shuck's probably going in the first 3 rounds. There's talk of him in the first round. I've kind of got my doubts. My guess is there's going to be I would guess that Shedeur Sanders goes in the first round, and I think that Jackson Dart probably does. And then I think the second round becomes where I actually think Ewers is going to go in the second round, by the way. And I'd be thrilled if the Seahawks took him at 50 or 52. Brady Cook's interesting. Athletic profile to move around. I'll take a 7th round flyer on Brady Cook. I'd probably rather use it on something else, but we got a couple fun topics after this. If this is the thing you hate, by the way, but you've stuck around, you're going to be rewarded for that. Do I do my celebratory or my traditional Jabbar Muhammad pick here? That's a question. That's an option. It's a reasonable option here. Johnny Walker we've done just on almost name alone. I actually like everything I've read on Clay Webb. Would be interesting, but do we triple up on offensive linemen? I guess if you're in the 7th round. So what have we missed out on so far? You get 2 receivers, 2 offensive linemen, no edge rushers. I don't feel good about that. No strictly corners. I don't love that. Now, who would I if I could if Restrepo, there's the kid from let's find his name. So I'm not just calling him the kid from East Carolina. He went before the Seahawks drafted 50th here. Savon Ravel. Pencil him in at 50 if he's available. For sure. Wasn't available in this draft. Landon Jackson, edge rusher. Pencil him in if he's available at 50. I'd take either of those guys at that spot over Demetrius Knight, over Xavier Restrepo. I'd love to get into there wasn't anyone that I liked that fell to the spots. Do we reach? I think I'm just going to take the guy that I believe in here. And also, I mean, the Seahawks, I don't think they have an immediate need at edge. But I think that's you definitely want to keep rotating guys in. I mean, you see you've seen how Draymond Jones was not super effective and injured, I believe, in parts, and obviously Uchenna Nwosu has been very injured in his time in Seattle. All right, we're drafting Clay Webb. We're moving on because we have a couple fun things to talk about before I have to go pick up my kids. I'm going to let this draft roll out and check my phone real quick. Let's see. So we got a C+ on Kelvin Banks, B+ on Demetrius Knight. The only A is Brady Cook. Bottom 35% of Seahawks drafts. If I was doing this, sometimes I do it just as a fidget spinner, basically, and I would probably be trying to get a higher score. I was trying to do something that was slightly more realistic to what I think the Seahawks would do, and so bottom 35%.